Abraham Lincoln.
The Civil War would define Lincoln's entire presidency. Even though Lincoln said that he had no interest in ending slavery in the South, he was perceived by many as an emancipator. When Lincoln took office, he took a conciliatory tone, but repeated his two positions. The South could not secede, and the two Federalist forts in the new Confederacy, Fort Pickens and Fort Sumter, were still part of the Union. Lincoln decided not to initiate the fighting and waited to see what the South would do. When the South attacked Fort Sumter, the Civil War began.
Lincoln was an intensely pragmatic man. He felt the severity of the crisis required him to, well, ignore the Constitution at times. The most controversial moment was when he was faced with the threat of secession by Maryland, one of the border slave states. He suspended habeas corpus in the state and imprisoned secessionists without charges or trial. He knew he was violating the Constitution, but his thinking was that what's the point of having a Constitution if there's no country left to back it?
The original reason for the Civil War was to preserve the Union, not end slavery. But by September 1862, Lincoln issued the first Emancipation Proclamation, which said slaves would be free in Confederate states if the states did not return to the Union by January 1st, 1863. The second Emancipation Proclamation issued on that day named 10 Confederate states where the proclamation now applied.
The proclamations ensured slavery-disliking Europe would not recognize the South, eased pressure on Lincoln from abolitionists in his party, and changed the main reason for the war.
In March 1863, Lincoln starts the first Union draft. The option to get out of the draft by hiring a substitute or paying $300 made the draft particularly unpopular with the working class. There were several riots in the Union cities in response.
The Confederate General Lee surrendered to Grant on April 8, 1865. At Lincoln's request, the terms of surrender were generous. Lincoln was focused on reconciliation with the South and was already having conflicts with radical Reconstructionists who favored a more forceful approach. Lincoln would miss many of those future conflicts and the last few weeks of the war. He became the first U.S. president to be assassinated on April 14, 1865.